Little background on me. I started as a 4th grader competing in this event and other Science Olympiad events. Competed up through high school and started supervising after I graduated. I went to CMU, got a teaching degree, and decided not to teach. I'm a jeweler, which I get to play with rocks every day. I've been supervising for the elementary and junior high, middle school, high school, both here in Macomb County and at the national level for years now. So I'm going to go through a short PowerPoint and then we'll talk a little bit about the class that we're going to have too. So first, Science Olympiad, journey into the study of science, right? We know that. Additionally, we know it's not limited to the exceptional students, even though most of our kids are very exceptional. Always try and make a point to incorporate everyone. So we're going to talk about the event itself, the rules, the topics, outline, some tips. I'm going to post this PowerPoint online, so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything. It'll all be on the internet. Talk about making tests, things that I do when I take tests, or make the tests, and things that you could do when you make practice things for them. How to put together a team, some strategies for them, and some other resources. So, how does this event work? You can send up to 2 kids, learning about rocks and minerals, geology. Basically, all they can bring in is a pencil and a chart that they make. There's no specific limitations on the chart, no size constraints, but I'll stress again and again, it's very important for your kids to make the chart. So bring a chart in that they hopefully will have made. The format itself is going to be 20 stations and about 100 questions. I'll get into a little more depth in a sec. So what are they going to be expected to know? Number 1 is identification of samples. Everything is really hinged on being able to pick up a rock or a mineral and identify it. So with any luck, they should be able to identify everything on the list. Once they can identify it, then we can build from that. Learn about the uses of the samples, the attributes, what properties do they have. And this year, we're having a special emphasis on sedimentary rocks. I'll elaborate on that more as well. So for this year, we added 3 new rocks to the list. Breccia, which is kind of like a conglomerate, except it's got real angular, sharp, broken pieces glued together instead of rounded pebbles. Coquina, which is broken up shells basically stuck together. And travertine limestone, which is a limestone that was formed by running water, depositing minerals, like in a cave, stalactites and other things. That's travertine limestone. So those are samples that are special for this year only. We also added 3 minerals that are associated with sedimentary rocks. One would be aragonite, which is kind of a cousin to a calcite. Another one, barite, which is, it's really heavy, it's easy to identify by its heft. And dolomite, which is pinkish or whitish, sometimes orangish, little crystals. And I want to be clear here that the dolomite we're talking about is a mineral, dolomite mineral. There is a rock that used to be called dolomite. It's now mostly called dolostone, but that's not what I'm talking about here. So we're talking about the mineral dolomite. So I want to stress, I want to make it really clear that when I say that there's a sedimentary rock emphasis, there's 40-some samples on the list of the rocks and minerals, and I added 3 rocks and 3 minerals. So I don't want you to think that this event is going to be about sedimentary rocks and only focus on that. It's going to be augmented a little bit with more sedimentary stuff, but still make sure that your kids are studying all the minerals and the igneous rocks and the metamorphic rocks as well. So there's just going to be a little bit of extra sedimentary focus. So I will only ask your students to identify samples that are on the list, on the rule sheet. I will probably end up using some samples that are not on that rule sheet, but I will not ask them what it is. But I might ask them what crystal shape is sample A, and using the knowledge that they have, they could tell me that's cubic by recognizing the shape, even though it may be a mineral that they've never seen before. So they'll only be asked to identify things on the list. This goes for all the events. Make sure you're checking the Macomb County, the webpage, Science Olympiad webpage for rule clarifications. We usually don't have too many, compared to building events, we're pretty easy here. But make sure to check it. So real brief what the event is about. Rocks are classified into 3 different groups, right? Igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And rocks are a combination of minerals. So there's different minerals put together, they make rocks. The amount of those minerals and how they're put together defines what rock it is, and it can sometimes tell us how that rock formed. Minerals, on the other hand, are pure, so they're just one thing, pure, crystal, and solid. And they have properties that are predictable. Some of them are really handy sometimes, the hardness, the streak. Some of them are less reliable. Color is a little bit more difficult sometimes. But these particular properties I have listed here, I would make sure you touch on with your kids. As far as you can take them, there's tons of additional properties that they can learn about, and I would encourage you to take them as far as they can go. But make sure you at least hit on these basic ones. So for you guys, what do you need to do? Practice a lot with your kids. Give them quizzes. Most importantly, put samples in their hands. So if you don't have some rocks or minerals, get some. And if you don't know where to get anything, cool, nice, fancy things, literally go outside and grab some rocks from landscaping. A lot of them are on the list. You can identify them, you can learn together. So make sure that they're touching samples as often as possible. Have them work on making charts, work on making diagrams. As far as the way that the event runs, we will probably, I'm pretty sure we're going to have 20 stations. And they'll be in covered boxes. It'll actually be this style box. This picture is probably 15 years old. But we will tell them when to open the box and tell them when to close the box. It's looking like it's going to be 1 minute per station, which is really tough. So the letters on the top of the box tell the students which one to go to next. They're going to go up the alphabet. I will help them, and I'll have helpers helping them to make sure they get to the right spot. The questions and the answers are underneath. So they'll open, when we tell them to open the box, they'll open it up, and there's questions and multiple choice answers in the box lid. They'll then record their answers on a Scantron sheet. So for the most part, most of the minerals and rocks will be inside the box. Occasionally I'll bring a real big one that's got to be next to it. But for the most part, the samples will be in the box. They can pick up the samples, unless I specifically say, hey, the samples in box J are really delicate, I don't want you to touch them, in which case they'd be in a box or something anyway. They can pick them up. So in fact, I encourage them to pick them up and get a better look at them. So they'll put their answers on a Scantron sheet. Due to the amount of teams that we have competing, in order to differentiate them and get different point values, some questions will be worth 1 point, some are going to be worth 2 points. I'm not going to mark which ones are which. More often than not, many of the 1 point questions are simple identification, and many of the 2 point questions build on something. So they need to have correctly identified and then understand something else about it. So make sure you give your kids lots of quizzes at all the meetings, whatever you can come up with, games, anything to try and keep it interesting. Keep them thinking about the rocks, thinking about properties, thinking about minerals. One of the best activities, in fact, we did it at all of my meetings when I was a student, is arranging samples. My coach would put a pile of rocks on the table, and one of the first activities was she would have something, say, just separate the rocks and the minerals, or separate the types of the rocks into igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary, or separate whatever level we were at. She would have us arrange things, which, you know, it's a helpful activity to be able to pick up attributes and arrange them together. So the chart, like I said, there's no specific limit on what they can do. My recommendation is a sheet of paper, not too big. The bigger, more complex you make it, the less likely that they're going to be able to find what they need in the time frame. They've only got 1 minute to answer 4, 5, 6 questions, however many are in there, which is really hard. So if they don't know it, they don't have a lot of time to be looking on the chart and finding that answer. So the more concise it can be, oftentimes the better. Also, I know some teams have what I call legacy charts that were made years and years ago and get handed down. I strongly recommend your students make their own charts. If you do that, they will know where the information is. If they made the chart, they know where they wrote down the hardness or whatever. They'll go right to it and find it. Whereas if it's something that they've just referenced, they won't be as familiar with it. So these are some things that I often do when I make tests. You can take some of these same tips and use them in practice tests and activities. I make sure that I convey my expectations to them so they know exactly what they want me to do. I often choose, specimens that are really typical. There's sometimes you'll see a sample that looks really weird, and I don't want to trick them, right? I want them to know it if they know it, instead of giving them a really odd sample. So typical looking samples. Sometimes one sample, sometimes lots of them. I always make sure to label my samples with, I use hot glue in these letters, and the hot glue does a very good job of staying on, but also if I really want it off, you can peel it and get it off. It's not going to come off on accident, but it'll come off and then the sample's not damaged. So that's a good tip. Also, another thing that I do, I put different color dots on adjacent stations. So in case a kid gets excited, it's happened that they'll bring a sample to the next station with them, not even realizing that they've done it. And then it's real easy to see that it shouldn't be there because the colors don't match. So sometimes it's good to give them lots of information. Sometimes it's good not to, right? A lot of times a hand lens is good, some sort of magnification to see up close. I make a point to try and cover everything reasonably well. We've got the whole list. I try and touch on everything pretty equally, so I don't focus on just one particular area. In the room, I explain to the kids what direction they're going to be flowing, and we have helpers to help them move. I don't indicate the tiebreakers, because I don't want to confuse them with anything else in the 1 minute they have to try and figure out what they want to do. But I do just select some answers out of the test. There are some questions that I consider particularly difficult, and whoever does the best on those extra hard ones would win the ties. With the amount of points we have, I don't expect a lot of ties. I think we might have had more last year. So if possible, for you guys, I recommend having more than 2 students practice. In case one of them can't compete, scheduling, or if one of them gets sick, or worst case scenario, they are mentoring for next year down the road. Oftentimes it works to pair your strengths. I find a lot of the best teams I see, one student is really good at identifying things, and another student's more good on the conceptual things, or memorizing hardnesses or something, but maybe not as good at identifying the physical samples. But see if you can pair them up properly, or a good team. Make sure they practice together. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the kids argue over who's going to record the answers on the first station, and their whole minute is gone. And they haven't even started because they're fighting over who gets the pencil. So make sure that they can actually work together and cooperate. And hopefully you don't have one kid that just takes over Wallace is the other one around. So make sure they know the event, read the rules, know what's expected of them. I always tell the kids to talk quietly, and they never do. They're always loud. But I suppose you have no idea if your neighbor knows what he's talking about anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's important that they don't mix the samples up. Like I said, I put different colored dots, which is good. I remind the kids not to leave their chart behind, and inevitably, I always have somebody say, "Oh, whose chart is this?" And of course, it's 5 stations ahead, and you figure out where it goes. And I always encourage, and I try to give them time at the end to fill in something on their Scantron. There's no penalty for guessing. So if they run out of time, just put something, right? You got a 1 in 5 chance on a Scantron of getting it right. So, most importantly, the most important thing for them is to be able to identify samples. Everything is hinged on that. They won't get any of the secondary questions right, or not many of them, if they can't identify what they are in the first place. Make sure the kids can work together. I strongly encourage them to make their own chart and practice using it. You know, so have activities where they actually answer questions using their chart, and have fun, right? So that's all I've got for this presentation. I want to talk for a little bit about the class that we're having. Probably many of you are familiar with it, some of you might not be. The Mount Clemens Gem and Lapidary Society sponsors a class. I do the presentation of it. It's 4 sessions, and we'll go over pretty much everything that they're going to need to know for this. Depending on what level of registration they choose, they can get a rock kit. I believe there's 3 levels. One is $5, would be just an entry fee. They don't get anything other than the paperwork. The next level up, they get a small kit with the new samples for this year. That's $10. Or for $20, they get the full kit. They get the new stuff and all the stuff that's been in the event for years, and all the paperwork. They are doing registration for it today. If you haven't seen that, they're in the computer lab. You can sign up if you'd like. There's a QR code on a piece of paper right outside the door. You can snap it with your smartphone and sign up now. They're taking money for it today if you want, or you can mail it in later if you choose. But it's important for you to register as soon as you can. Last year we ordered, I think, 120 kits, and we ended up with 130 some, almost 40 kids by the time it was done from late registration. So some kids didn't end up with kits because we didn't have them. So if you register early enough, we'll make sure to have a kit for you. So do you guys want to build on that at all? They're from the Rock Club.
If you don't register ahead of time, you might end up not having a kit. We will, anyone who shows up and wants to buy one there, we're going to have to wait until everybody else shows up. We do have some people who don't show up. And that's the only way we'll have enough kits for anybody to come up and buy. We are trying to, you have 6 extra stones, specimens. We're trying to order extra ones because a lot of people want to buy the extra kit parts anyway. But to your benefit, please sign up ahead of time.
Yes.
How big are the samples in the rocket?
They're pretty small. They're, about an inch-ish.
Yeah, and they're getting all 46?
Yeah, well, they won't get citrine. Our supplier physically can't get it, which is a minimal loss. There's all other quartz crystals of different colors in the kit, so the only difference between that and the others will be color. And currently my supplier can't get dolomite. I'm doing my best to try and get that because that's a supplementary mineral. So I'm doing my best to make that work for us. But other than that, everything else on the list will definitely be included. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is it $20 per kid, or is it
per student?
Per student.
Yep.
Is there a way to register online for like other members of our team that aren't here today?
Yeah, you can register for anyone online. You can either do it today or you can do it later. You don't have to do it today.
What's the website for that?
I don't have a specific link. There's a QR code out front. There upstairs. In the computer lab, they have it up. I don't know the link.
We can probably find it out down
Yeah, definitely you can. And it's been, the link has been sent to the head coach for the school, too, your school's head coach.
Do you have it on your website yet?
I don't, and I don't have a website. I'll be posting this on the Macomb, the regular Macomb Sense Olympiad webpage.
That's one of them.
Yeah, I gotcha. It may be on there. If it's not, it will be, I'm sure. Yes.
Is it one per limit to the coach or the kid itself?
Say that again?
Can I buy two for one for each kid as a coach?
Sure. Yeah, you can. Each kid can get a kit. Absolutely.
If one of the kids has something from last year, all you have to do is buy what's the supplement.
If you want. Anything else?
Reflective of the larger samples you're gonna have on the day of,
Yeah.
pretty close.
You know, as close as they can be. You know, imagine this broken into smaller pieces. You wouldn't be able to see the crystal shape as well, right?
Right.
So there's obviously some loss in smaller samples, but you know, it's what is affordable. Most of the time, it translates well into smaller pieces. And during the class, I have the students pick up their sample while I have behind me on the screen lots of other pictures of similar samples, and I'll point out different features. Some of them they'll be able to see in their sample easily, some of them they probably won't be able to see in their sample. But I'll discuss all the different things that it could have. So, anything else?
And again, will there be a lot of like geology type questions, plate tectonic questions?
Nope.
like boundary questions? things of that
There
nature?
might be a little tiny bit of geology, but it's mostly rock and mineral based things. But there might be, of the 20 stations, there could be 1 or 2 stations that might touch on geology. The concepts like that, but not much.
Any recommendations on the reference books?
I always tell people, go to the library and check out a whole bunch, have your kids flip through them and see what they like. The DK, I think Smithsonian bought over the DK line. That was one of my favorites. They had good pictures and it was pretty easy to see. Honestly, there may be more good books that I haven't seen yet too. So I always encourage people, get a bunch, look at them, and then find one and buy it if you want. But anything else? You guys are free.